Hello, Brad and Pat here from the Cruel Angels podcast. We're breaking down Neon Genesis Evangelion episode by episode, but we're also taking time to deep dive on some specific subjects related to the show. So right now we're going to be talking about the Netflix release of Evangelion, which at the time of this recording just came out just a couple days ago.
Yeah, like 3 days,
I
think.
Mm-hmm. So we've been watching the series for quite a while now. We're kind of at the midway point in terms of our personal viewing and getting ready for the podcast when this Netflix dropped. We actually have another video that you'll probably see sometime in the future where we were talking about pros and cons of binging shows. And so you'll hear us talking about kind of what our hopes are for this Netflix release, which now just happened. So we're going to take some time now to kind of react to our experience of it and also some of the larger reactions that have been going on the internet and elsewhere. So first off, Pat, as someone who is still watching the show, who isn't that familiar with the original dub that came out in the 90s, what were your initial impressions when you first heard the English voice cast for the Netflix show?
So it was really odd because I didn't want to dig too deep in it since I want to watch the original.
You still want to see it fresh as the Japanese.
Yeah, I watched a comparison video and I watched part of it was Asuka's introduction video,
right?
And I saw the Netflix version and I saw the original dub version, and some parts were weirdly indistinguishable.
Yeah.
I prefer Shinji's original dub voice, personally. It just sort of matched his character a bit more. But, like we were kind of talking about before, it weirdly sounded like everybody was, like, doing an impression, or they sounded very, very close to the original. I did notice that Masato's voice was missing, like, an accent. And since I'm not familiar with the show, I don't know if that accent, like, becomes part of her character. Like, everyone knows, like, oh, that's how Masato talks, and now that it's not present, is it, like, noticeable?
Right. Well, actually, for me, my personal experience with it is, when I first watched the show, it was with the original voice cast from way back in the 90s. And since I've gotten the DVDs the Platinum DVDs that came out, I guess, 2004, 2005, something like that, I've pretty much only watched the Japanese sub, because I appreciate it more. So when I watched this, I also started with the Asuka episode. I think it's episode 8 or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a good comparison episode because pretty much all the characters.
Yeah, they're all there.
My first thought was like, oh, they didn't actually redub it. That those news stories were wrong. This is the same voice cast. It was when the Misato voice actor started talking that I was like, oh wait, no, this is a different dub. What's going on?
Yeah.
Because for the Asuka voice actress, and I think also for the Misato voice actors, I really feel like it seemed like their direction was try to sound like the original English dub actress, which was strange to say the least. As someone familiar with the original, it was kind of like double jarring, because on the one hand, you're already aware that this is a translation of an original Japanese voice actor, and now I feel like I've almost seen a translation from the English translation. So Misato was the character from the original English dub, ironically enough, that I was most pleased with that voice actress. Like, she's the one I was like, oh yeah, that's the character that I think actually did a good job. The others, they're fine, but, so that was the one that pulled me out of it, and I was like, oh, this is a new dub in a very strange direction. So I think kind of the way I'm feeling seems pretty echoed throughout when I'm looking at articles. People are just kind of confused about the direction of this dub and the choices that were made.
They either don't like it because it's not better, or they don't like it because it's just the same. Like,
right.
Or worse.
Yes. Again, it seems like, to me, it's not a bad dub. If you watch the show dub, you're not going to get a terrible experience.
Yeah, I didn't hate listening to it. But in terms
of what the direction of it was, to me, it seems like the worst way possible to do it, which is don't keep the voice actors that some people are attached to, but replace them with people doing impressions of them. It seems like if you're going to start from scratch, you would go a different direction, but it seems they more or less try to duplicate the original English dub, which, I
don't know when I will watch it in English.
Yeah.
I don't have a drive to, I guess.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm now used to these Japanese voices of everybody. I will say that there was a clip on the Asuka introduction video that, like, Masato's original voice actor really stood out to me in, like, a positive way over the new one. And it's when she's looking out the window and she's like, oh, great job, Asuka. There's, like, a light in her voice that matches the facial expression. And I feel like the old voice actor captured that better than the new one.
Right.
But, like, the new voices, they're not bad.
Yeah, right.
It's just they're not better.
They're not better than, yeah. They're not. For a voice acting nowadays from present day to be same par as a voice acting from, like, 1995 is a little bit of a letdown. I was hoping for kind of a totally different direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Something different about it. So, But it is what it is, and a lot of people, I understand, for whatever reasons, don't like reading subtitles. If you're going to watch the show dubbed, when I first watched Evangelion, I watched it with English dub, and obviously I got super attached to the show. So it's not like you're going to have a terrible experience watching it with the dub. I still say that the sub is the way to go, at least for a first watching.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is definitely going to be a lot of people's first time ever watching it.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, I know a lot of my friends that, like, knew that I was doing this podcast, but they had no access of watching it. Now that's on Netflix, and I know that they're more of a dubs over subs, like, people, like, it's great. It's there, and it's fine, and I listened to it, it was fine. I'm going to continue listening to it, and watching it and reading the subtitles like we have been. It feels right to me now, because this is how I've started.
Exactly.
It just feels weird to deviate from that. But I also want to say, no disrespect to any voice actors.
Oh yeah, no.
I know you don't mean that either.
I think it's principally, I take it to be the direction that they were given from whoever's producing it. Like, try to sound like the original Asuka voice actress, or try to sound like the Misato voice actress, not them making these choices. And, they always do the thing with dubs where they try to make the words match the mouth movements of the characters. Yeah. So sometimes they have to, like, say things in a stilted way that makes sense in the rhythm of Japanese, maybe, but not in English. And that's always a problem with any dub, and I never quite understood that, because I would rather it sound better, like sound like a better performance, and not match the voice movements. But then again, I tend not to like dubs, so maybe I'm not the right audience for that kind of thing.
I personally, like, there are times where it is jarring. There's that Final Fantasy movie that came out, the one based off of Seven, Advent Children.
Yeah.
In the beginning of it, there's like a scene where the mouths do not line up with the dialogue, and every time I see it, it's not like a super serious scene, but there's tension, and I always laugh.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't want that, but at the same time, it's like, I'd rather the dialogue be clear and concise and not, like, miss nuance and certain things, just so you can have it line up with mouth movement.
Right.
Like, it's just, I don't know, it's a tough thing, and I have no idea of a solution other than reanimate it, but, like, that's not an option.
Right, exactly. So, in general, even though the response to Netflix has been mixed to the rollout, and there's some other things we'll talk about in a second that people are having problems with.
Oh, yeah.
I've got to say, it's pretty cool to see, like, everyone talking about Evangelion. I mean, in terms of people being upset about Evangelion, that is what it is to be an Evangelion fan.
Well, yeah.
It's people being, like, upset and, like, not liking the show or arguing with each other. So it's kind of funny that that's, like, happening again.
Yeah, it's a
like
weird resurgence. Yeah. And it's no different. Like, there's controversy surrounding Evangelion.
Right, like, that's what Evangelion is. So, in a way, it would feel off if everyone was just, like, completely on board with it.
Yeah, this is the greatest, there's no flaws now.
Right.
Like, that would be bizarre. So, it is kind of cool to see it, like, resurge in a way that, like, new fans can feel like the old fans.
So a lot of the discussion about Evangelion that I find less interesting is kind of analyzing kind of the lore of the show. I mean, I think in the podcast, if you listen to our normal episodes, we talk a lot about our appreciation for the world building and the way that it's clear that the showrunners have put a lot of thought into, like, the history of things. I think that's cool. But I also think people can get bogged down a lot on, like, like, what's the history of this? What's this, the religious symbolism put into it? And I think that's mostly been acknowledged at this point as window dressing for a more of a character study kind of psychological show with cool robot fights and stuff in it too, of course. When the show came out and it had such a niche audience, it didn't have the widespread viewability for those discussions to happen as much.
Yeah, for sure. Like, the internet playing a big part in this now. Like, you can go anywhere and have a discussion and be called an idiot for your opinions. Like,
right.
But it's cool. I'm glad it exists, because if you hate the dubs, just watch it in Japanese, like we're doing.
Yeah.
And I've heard, I guess we can get into, like, some controversies, because I've heard controversies on, well, they even changed what some of the subtitles say.
Right.
Now, I'm not personally super connected with the show. I don't know it backward and forward, and I haven't watched it multiple times. So some of the complaints I was seeing might have fell on, like, deaf ears to me. Because I was just like, oh, whatever. But, like, if it's severe nuance missing or, like, story beats are changed, then I understand the complaints totally.
Yeah, well, first off, I get it. I get why people are so precious about it and, like, oh, you changed this thing. I've known this line this way for, like, decades, and you're gonna change it to be this thing that now has a different subtext to it. Like, so first off, I get why people can be upset about those kind of things. And this particular incident, not to get into too much spoilers, I can see can have even a greater resonance for people dealing with representation and things like that. So first off, I get that. But at the same time, it's a translation. That's what it is. If you're looking for the perfect translation, it doesn't exist, because the perfect way to watch the show is in Japanese, obviously. any dubbed version or subtitle version we're going to get is going to be removed from that in some way. And I think the best way, if you watch the show, whether you watch it dubbed or subtitled and you like it, the best way, I think, is to watch all the different versions of it and compare them and kind of congeal them together. So, for example, for me, being familiar with the original sub that happened in the 90s, I'm glad to see a different sub so that I can compare them to each other and be like, okay, well, this line could be read this way or it could be read this way. All those things kind of come together as opposed to saying this is the definitive translation. The definitive translation is just watching it in Japanese. You'd have to learn to speak Japanese to do that.
One thing that I just now realize is, isn't Ava kind of odd in terms of like the storytelling being retold different ways through movies,
yes,
compared to shows?
exactly.
So you could consider that, like, if you consider it like alternate timelines or alternate dimensions or alternate stories, this is just now a new one. If you really want to, keep it.
I actually somewhat think of it that way, not in a literal sense, like this is all canon.
Yeah.
But in the terms of like, I remember Earthbound, a video game that I know you're not all the way through the game, but both of us really appreciated it.
It's a tough
and I remember, so there's a sequel to Earthbound Mother 3 that came out in Japan. Long story. But anyways, someone asked the creator recently if he was going to create another Earthbound game or another Mother game, and he said, well, actually, everyone playing Earthbound, that is the sequel to Earthbound. People experiencing the game and sharing their experiences, that's the sequel to Earthbound. And I almost feel the same thing about Evangelion, but really, which is a show about cycles and changes, but any piece of art in general. Like, people talk about the Bible as like a living text, because like it's still relevant now. I feel like that's the testament of a good work of art, is that people are still getting upset about it to this day.
I had the dumb thought of like him saying like, the sequel to Earthbound is everyone sharing their experiences and how they're different. And everyone's like, wow, so profound. And then I go, yeah, but you're going to make it? Are you going to make another one?
Yeah, no, but
it's like not accepting the answer.
Really, though.
Yeah, but like, how about another one?
Yeah, right.
But there is always that guy. And I guarantee there's somebody trying to make a petition page to bring back the old dub.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't actually check. Is the original Japanese voices, are they the same?
The Japanese audio is the same.
It's okay.
But
so they didn't redo that.
No, but the subtitles have been altered. I said, it seems like it's more of a straight translation from what I understand. So maybe some of the character that was added to it in the English sub from the original might be lost. And I could see that being good or bad. Like I said, I feel like the best way to do it is to kind of compare all the translations. That's also probably more work than most people want to do when they're watching a show.
I should have dug in to see if Asuka's voice her way of delivering lines is less annoying.
Well, first off, that tsundere trope,
yeah,
I feel like people get it, but it doesn't really directly translate to English as well. Like, you have to have kind of like stinging but sweet Japanese voice, like Little Tokyo voice, for it to work.
Yeah.
So it's already kind of a tough sell. I remember when I first watched Dragon Ball in English, and Chi-Chi, the wife character, it's like, man, she's just like me. Like, she's just like Nagio. And then when I finally watched it in Japanese,
it's different.
I was like, oh, completely. I get it. She's a babe.
Yeah.
Like, it's like just from the voice actor. Obviously, the animation didn't change, but just the voice actor, like, now I get her character.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a tough sell either way. And I feel like now at this point where you're seeing a voice actress that seems to me to be doing an impression of another voice actress who's already removed from the original, the character, to me, just seems like it keeps on getting shallower and shallower. Whatever nuance was lost from going from Japanese to English, it was lost even more from going from English to another version of English.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I know of a few cons. You might know way more. A couple of pros that I've heard is it is in very good high quality. I mean, as high as it can be. Like visually, it's pretty
It's
crisp.
definitely the best version of the show I've ever been able to watch.
Yeah.
To the point where I was actually seeing things that I'd never seen before.
Yeah, and your DVDs are great.
Yeah,
I watch it, it's like, these look awesome.
We're not Blu-rays quality. We're watching on a big TV, and it looks pretty sharp and pretty crisp. But to see a show that I've been obsessing over for like over a decade and seeing like, oh, I never noticed that before. I mean, to me, that, for all the people being upset about it, and I get it, it's not exactly how they want the release to be. It's like, that's amazing to me.
Yeah,
like I
think that's phenomenal.
I just saw a detail that I'd never seen before on the show. What was it? It's in. I don't know.
Oh, it's later.
It's later.
Oh, damn!
It's all the way
all right, try to remember what it is, because I'd like you to like show us the DVD and be like, all right, let's watch it again on Netflix. Right. Look at that.
To even explain somewhat what I saw would be a spoiler, so I won't get to it. But yeah, cool. It was pretty amazing, and I haven't even watched the whole show again through it, so who knows if I'll pick up another thing. So I think it's great, and I think I saw some people online when they heard that the dub wasn't what people were hoping, or the translation wasn't even hoping, were even asking things like, "Oh man, I was looking forward to seeing the show. Should I even bother watching it?"
I think you should.
Yes,
it
you
wouldn't
should
hold
watch
me
it.
back.
Yeah, and I actually think
know.
so, like I said, watch the show, and I actually think one of the downsides about, I talked about it's great that everyone's talking about Evangelion again. One of the downsides about it being so easily accessible is I feel like people are going to have their experience colored before they watch it. So if they hear about one of the things that Pat alluded to, which is a character that comes in later in the series and some of his translations adding a different kind of tone to the character, if people read that before they see the series, I just think it's a shame that they're going to come to like, oh, this is what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Now I know, and not getting their first experience of it before. Then you could deep dive into all reading interpretation. So my suggestion is, if you're interested in the show at all, give it a try. If you really like it, you can start digging deep into these people debating it, because that's been going on since like the 90s. But just experience it for what it is. And like I said, you're never going to get the best translation, even if you speak Japanese. Honestly, this show came out in 1994, 1995. Even if you speak Japanese, you're going to miss some of the nuance. The only way to get the perfect viewing experience is to go back to 1995 and be like a Japanese teenager and get all the cultural significance of it at that time. So abandon the thought of having the perfect viewing experience and enjoy it for what it is. And then, if you become a crazed fan like I am, then you could dive into all those debates and analysis and stuff like that.
Would you argue that the perfect viewing experience of Eva does not exist? Because there's always controversy surrounded, even when it originally came out.
I mean, I feel like that has become part of the show. I mean, I don't think when the guy made the show, he was like, "Oh man, I can't wait for people to be angry about this show."
Wouldn't you say that this is the most perfect?
I think that everything surrounding Eva, from the original release all the way to now, all the controversies, all the budget problems, all the delays, even up to this current delay, where the last movie hasn't come out yet, and he took a break to make Godzilla. All of that is the Evangelion experience, and that's what makes it like an exciting show to be a fan of.
The other pro that I want to say is, like, since it's like high quality and everything, this is now the most accessible version of Eva that exists for people to watch. You have your DVDs; they came out forever ago. They're decent quality. But if you want to have the same experience as us, maybe even better in terms of quality, you can watch it on Netflix now, and your subtitles are a little different. Yeah. But, like, that's great.
And it's so
good that it's so accessible now.
We were talking about putting this podcast together before the Netflix announcement.
Yeah.
And then when it happened, we're like, oh man, this is perfect. So, we tried to work on it so we can start the episodes when Netflix happened. But the truth is, Ava's a big enough show that we were going to do it regardless of whether it was possible for people to watch it easily.
Yeah, before we even knew of anything, you brought up this idea months. Yeah. Maybe even like a whole year. Yeah. It was like floating around, and then a couple months went by, you're like, okay, do you really want to do it? And it's like, then all of a sudden, you had bought stuff to start recording, and then you're like, hey, Netflix announcement's coming out.
Yeah, well, the Netflix thing was almost like a blessing, because I could imagine us forever just being like, hey, we should work on that podcast. Yeah. I've heard someone say that saying, do you want to start a podcast is like this generation's version of do you want to start a band? It's just like something that young people just do.
That is so true.
And they just talk about it but never actually get it done. So the Netflix release date was kind of our impetus to be like, okay, we should really start working on this so we can have something for when it drops on Netflix. My laptop doesn't even have a CD drive on it anymore. I had to like hook up an external one. So the fact that everything is streaming now and it's so easy to access it, I mean, it's a positive, guys. Like I said, I get the gripes. I have them too. But the fact that people can watch Evangelion so easily now and in such good quality is a good thing.
Yeah, since you said gripes, I want to move into like cons that I know of. But before I do that, I just want to say the original thing still exists. No one can take that away from you. And I'm a person who's big on like I hate reboots to a degree unless they're great and they do something new. Like I love the new Spider-Man movies, and I liked the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. I know a lot of people disagree with that, and I liked the Sam Raimi ones. I just like the character and it's handled well, but I don't like reboots. I don't like weird adaptations. But if it means that it brings the thing that I love to more people and makes it accessible, and then if somebody falls in love with this version of the character that maybe I don't like, but now they're down a rabbit hole and they'll interact with maybe the one that I'm a fan of, I think that's great. That's super.
Well, you know what has never existed until today, or maybe a few days from now, is someone who's like, oh, Evangelion, yeah, it's okay. It's never happened before. Either like you were super obsessed with the show, or you like, oh god, I hated that show.
Yeah, there's no mid.
There was no one who was just casually strolling through a store and be like, oh, let's give that show a shot. That's never happened before. Yeah. So the fact that a whole new group of people we'll be watching the show, and we'll just have these opinions that you're just kind of like, yeah, it was alright, 6 out of 10 or something like that. I think it's...
How dare you? It's either a 0 or a 10.
I think it's just... I don't know, amusing. that could exist.
But I'm happy to see that a thing that people really like is now accessible to a whole new group of people, creating a whole new like fan base and making new conversations.
And hey, I don't know if you saw, but today the Eva team, the actual the Japanese people, just announced that in about a week they're going to release the first 10 minutes of the new Eva movie.
I didn't hear about that, no. We've just been sort of talking about it.
Right. So apparently it's coming out next year. So it's kind of cool that even they were like, oh, man, everyone's watching our show on Netflix. We should drop something for people to see.
Yeah. This is cool. Yeah. We live in a cool time. So cons. I only know really of 2. I don't want this to be a spoiler because I honestly don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm still omitting things. You briefly mentioned it that there is a character that people are saying is now like misrepresented.
Right.
But you said that if you watch that episode, even though the dialogue is changed to an extent, it does not remove the undertones of the overall episode.
Yeah, so I feel like, and again, one of the things I mentioned before is like it's a shame that people are, by reading articles because they're interested, might be getting spoilers for this series. So I'm not going to say it in a spoilery way. But suffice to say that a certain episode or incident that happens later in the series has certain undertones to it that some people feel the new sub and dub lightens those undertones. What I think I can say to people who either know what I'm talking about or in on it or who are about to see it is I think that the 2 extreme reactions to it are both kind of wrong. Those undertones are there exactly as the term undertones implies. It's supposed to be something that's like, you see it there, it's everyone knows what's going on, but it's not explicitly stated.
Yeah, it's not.
So the fact that they make it slightly less explicit doesn't really hinder it because the whole point of it was it wasn't explicitly stated in the first place, if you understand what I'm saying.
For sure.
So, like I said, maybe someone would prefer one translation of it to another. That's fine, I get it. But I don't see it ruining the experience. I understand, like I said a little bit a while ago, it has other implications, like people, in terms of representation, and some people are upset about that. I get that. So I'm only commenting on it as a piece of art. I don't feel like it changes it enough to ruin the experience, even if I understand why someone would prefer one translation to another.
For sure. Mm-hmm. And then something that I personally do not like.
Yes.
And it seems that everybody on the internet does not like this. Why is Fly Me to the Moon not at the end?
That, to me, is actually the most annoying part of all of this.
I agree.
From, like, getting somewhat let down by the dub to the controversial translations.
It's weirdly the nail in the coffin. But then again, it's not, if you think about it. That is so synonymous with the show. That ending song. And
it's almost like, I don't know if it does just perfectly fit the show, or if we're just so conditioned to like, well, that's what happens when an episode
Probably
ends.
both.
Probably both. But it's really, something is missing. It just, so do you think if you didn't know that song was at the end, and it cut to the end credits, knowing the show has known for having memorable music, the theme song obviously is great, the music throughout the series is pretty memorable, would you be like, oh, it's kind of weird that when it came to the end credits, it kind of just played this like incidental background music? I don't know if anyone.
I don't know if I noticed if I wasn't familiar with the series, but like, there's this like odd charm about it that I think it's Ray singing it. Like that's like in my head.
I think there is every voice actress on the show has recorded a version of it, so it
very
well might be the Ray version.
Like, because that's the one I like love. Like, I don't know why. There's like an odd charm about it. The whole show is in Japanese, or the way we're watching is Japanese, and like, it's being sung in English. I imagine a character singing it because it also lines up with how weird Ray is.
Right.
I don't know. Like, for it to not be there, and I expect it to be there because I'm now conditioned, maybe.
Yeah.
But it, like you said, like there's a lot of like moon visuals throughout the show that it ties it together. It's the same that, and I brought this up before we even recorded. If I watch an episode of Cowboy Bebop, even though I skip the end credits and I skip the on the next time one, if the Real Folk Blues does not play, is it Cowboy Bebop to
right
me? And it's weirdly not. Like, even though it's just like, on to the next episode, I don't care about the credits.
Right.
It needs to be there.
Well, the other thing about Fly Me to the Moon, other than being like a pretty catchy cover, is that Ava can be so bleak and depressing. It's kind of funny that it kicks into this kind of poppy song at the end. Yeah. It's the same kind of joke as like at the end when the next time comes up and Misato says it all happy, regardless of whether she's like, oh, the worst thing in the world happens, and Shinji cries a lot, and like she says,
more answers.
Yeah, like it's almost like kind of the creators like winking, like, yeah, we know the show is like messed up, so here's just like a little funny thing at the end to like so here's your day isn't ruined,
like a weird palate cleanser.
So then to just play like kind of some instrumental music from the series at the end, you don't get that kind of sense of humor at the end, that kind of quirkiness that I feel like the cover brings to it. And again, I don't know if I'd miss it if I didn't know it was supposed to be there, but I can't imagine anyone being like, oh, good thing they got rid of that Fly Me to the Moon. That was
the worst part.
Yeah.
But so I guess it is like a rights or localization issue, but didn't you say that other countries have it on their Netflix?
I know in Japan they have it, and I think some other countries, when I was clicking around on the internet, people were saying, oh yeah, we have it too, like in Mexico or something like that. So I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know why specifically it seems like just America. I was going to say North America, but Mexico is part of North America. So I don't know why the distribution that we're watching in Boston right now doesn't have it. I can think of all sorts of reasons why. All I know is I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like that I don't have it.
And like, this is coming from me, somebody who's only an Ava fan up to halfway through the show, because that's all I've seen. Yeah. Its absence is noticeable, and I hate it.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, for Ava, you want to watch through to get to that next time part, because that part's, like, fun.
Yeah, it's weird.
So you can't even, like, skip the closing credits to, like, ignore the fact that the song's not there.
There's something about the next time for Ava that, like, I'm excited to see, because I know it will give me no information on the next episode.
It's just great. I don't know what it is. Again, it's that little kind of quirkiness. It makes you feel like, and I think this is probably true to life, but it feels like scrappy, like the creators were just like some crazy artists like in their basement working on this thing, and like, wouldn't it be funny if at the end she asked for more fan service? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though Ava's become such a big industry, it kind of brings it back to like, this was just like one guy or a handful of guys like kind of funny idea, and they just thought, oh, we'll put that at the end and it'll be like a running gag.
Yeah, it seems like the 11th hour like craziness, like, let's just do something wacky.
Yeah, right.
Because like I've worked on like so many like small video games and stuff, and there'll be these moments of like, you know, people have to stop for the night, and it's me and one programmer going out of our mind, like working on assets and him putting it in, and it's just like, hey, do you want to just put in this dumb thing where like the main character's head explodes, like for no reason? So, yeah, put it in. You get into like these wacky things that like, that's how I feel about those. On the next time, it's like, this was them like at like a boiling point.
Right.
Like, we need to do something funny. Like, yeah, it's weird. I know that my opinion might seem watered down or lukewarm because I'm not so fluent with the
fully
show.
invested. Yeah, fully immersed.
I like the show.
Yeah,
and I'm interested to watch this new dub. And I'm kind of want to like experiment versus like you and Kenzie. I watched the new dub,
right? So we all
and
kind
that's
of bring our own our own experience to it.
Yeah, just to see, because like if you guys re-watch an episode in English from your DVDs and I watch one from the dub, and then let it stew for a bit, and then we switch.
Yeah.
Do we disagree or do we agree?
Right.
Which one's the first one that we saw?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be an interesting experience.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are, you noticed that you're flipping through a line that you said you preferred in the original English. I'm sure there's some lines in the new dub that were like, oh, actually that was delivered better than in the other one.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll beat the Japanese voice actors, but that's just my bias.
Asuka said idiot one time less. And it really bothered me.
Yeah, it really ruins the character.
Yeah, she's supposed to say it 4 times. Yeah, I guess I'm not fuming mad. It's just a little disappointing to see that they didn't try something new or take a chance. Because I feel like if it were to be awful,
that would almost be like, oh, well, now there's a reason to watch this version. Yeah. Because it's like the awful version.
Yeah, it's like, oh, dude, the dub is so bad. I can't say that this is bad. It feels like the same to me.
Yeah, right.
If they had done something so different, it's like, what if Shinji's voice was this? And he sounded a bit like, take a chance, do something new. Because I think the best... What am I trying to say? I don't know what I'm talking about in terms of them.
You're saying that they should have swung for the fences.
Yeah, just what do you have to lose?
Right.
Nothing.
So it seems like they played it safe, but that seems to satisfy nobody, because either if you like the original dub, you're going to watch that, not something that's very similar to it. You know what I mean?
It's disappointing. I don't hate it. It won't change my opinion on the show.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see them really swing for the fences, like you said.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, if you're worried that you're not going to get the optimal viewing experience, don't let that hold you back from watching the show, is what my advice would be. Like Pat said, this is, in terms of visuals, this is the best quality it's been in, at least readily available for most people right now. Watch the subs if you have a problem with the dub. If you don't like to read, watch the dubs. It's going to be fine. So, watch Ava. Listen to our podcast.
If you think that the new subs are bad, learn Japanese, turn them off.
Yeah, stop complaining about it. And if you don't like Fly Me to the Moon being at the end, listen to our version of Fly Me to the Moon.
Yeah.
Which you're about to hear.
I made the joke saying we shouldn't include it at the end of this video.
That would just be mean.
Yeah, I want it back. Let's put it.
Just have this video queued up, and then when you get to the end, just press play and hear this version of Fly Me to the Moon right now.